Good morning, students. Myself, Dr. Bharti Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Ranchi Women's College, Ranchi. Today, the topic of my lecture is Postmodernism. This topic would be beneficial for the students of English Honours, Part 3, Semester 6, Paper 16, and also for the students of MA English, Part 2, Semester 4 and Paper 410. In the last class, we have already discussed modernism in detail, like the definition of modernism, the age of modernism, the characteristics of modernism, where individualism, experimentation, absurdism, symbolism, and formalism were the chief characteristics of the age. Postmodernism rejected all those specifications of modernism. According to postmodernist writers, the characteristics of modernism were not suitable for the period because the result of Second World War had changed the situation, the thought of the people, the living style of the people, and the necessities of the people. So, they rejected all the conditions that were appreciated for a good literature. They rejected all the norms that were fixed for a good quality for art and design. The individuality of a person, the experimentation in literary writings, and new concepts in art and architect were not accepted in the period of postmodernism. They started rejecting all the concepts of modernism. They wanted to establish their own views, own thoughts, own experiments. They failed for the betterment of society in their own period. The postmodernists were not in favor of westernization, as we know that modernism was the age of westernization. They started appreciating Eastern culture. This was the difference between the ideas of modernist and postmodernist. Postmodernism contains a number of features. Among them, use of language vestige, intertextuality, metafiction, equality, technoculture and hyperreality, temporal distortion, paranoia, magic realism, maximalism, and minimalism. These are the major features of the postmodernism. To understand postmodernism, it is very important to understand modernism first. If we compare modernism to postmodernism, we find that so many changes were done in the postmodern age. The things which were the important characteristics of the modernism were rejected by legends of postmodernism. They were not ready to accept these characteristics of modernism at any cost in their period. Modernism has been defined as a style and movement in art, architect, and literature, popular in the first half of the 20th century, in which modern ideas, methods, and materials were used rather than traditional ones, whereas postmodernism has been defined as a style and movement in art, architect, literature, etc. in the late 20th century that reacts against modern styles by mixing features from traditional and modern styles. It is hard to trace its exact beginning, either temporally or historically. It is certain that postmodernism is followed by modernism. Modernism is roughly adjacent with the 20th century Western ideas about art. It is the movement in visual arts, music, literature, and drama, which rejected the old Victorian standards of how art should be made, consumed, and what it should mean. The stalwarts of modernism in literature endeavored to redefine what poetry and fiction could be and do. T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound, Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, and Kafka are the doyens of the 20th century modernism in literature. Postmodernism is much easier to understand if we develop first an understanding of modernism. The age of modern describes the period of changes to Western society that occurred during the late 19th and early 20th century. Society was becoming largely industrial and cities were forming and multiplying. Modern thought is commonly defined by belief in progress, rationality, and absolute knowledge. These beliefs involve the ideas that the search for knowledge should be guided by rational inquiry, and that progress of the world will be achieved through intellectual advancement. Bureaucracy is a great example of modernist thought at work in society. German sociologist Max Weber defines bureaucratic administration as domination through knowledge. Bureaucracy involves efficient administrative organization and demands that every person or employee is treated equally. It represents the rationalization of culture, which is the key element of the modern thought. If we look in the root of postmodernism, we find that bureaucracy is still prevalent. This demonstrates one of the challenges of postmodernism. There is no straightforward way of drawing a line between the modern and postmodern. Some would argue that the postmodern is just a part or extension of modern era, where others would argue for their separateness. There is no single date that marks the beginning of postmodern era. There are multiple theories about the first postmodernist or when first modernism originated. This difficulty lies in the fact that postmodernism is not a unified intellectual movement with a singular goal or perspective. However, there are a number of recognizable themes that appear throughout the plethora of different versions of postmodernism. Defining postmodernism is a difficult process because the term can be used differently between disciplines. During the 1970s, the term postmodernism gained popularity as a term used to describe a period of architecture and art In this period, people were exhausted with the literature and architect of the modernist movement. This postmodernist artistic movement was characterized by pluralism, wit, and a sense of nostalgia and fun. When studying postmodernism, it is important to keep in mind that ideas about postmodernism in society and in politics can differ greatly from ideas about postmodernism within the arts and culture. The individual media of arts illustrates the variety of postmodernism. The industrialization of high modernism and the hegemonic position of the classics of modernism created a unique situation. The university, the museum, the art gallery network, and other manifestations of high modernism were governed by the latter. In music also, synthesis of classical and popular arts took place. The modernist sculptures and monumental buildings were architecturally bankrupt. The architecture did not manifest any vision or program. The older city fabric was wantonly destroyed, and in its place, the proliferation of glass houses and of high rises was seen. Postmodern theories largely opposes the fundamentals of modern thought. Postmodern theories reject the Western concept of progress. And now, what was that Western concept of progress? The Western concept of progress in modern age was the idea that intellectual and technological advancement will lead to the ultimate betterment of society. This rejection of progress also incorporates a rejection of grand meta-narrative or meta-narratives, which are commonly found in modern social theory. The concept of meta-narratives was introduced and critiqued by elite postmodernist Jean-Francois Lyotard. In narrative proper two, many changes took place. The linear narrative was dissolved, representation was repudiated, a revolutionary break with the ideology of storytelling took place. Non-fictional novel and the new narrative became popular. Both in film and novel, the nostalgia art was introduced. Thus, a gradual departure from modernism took place in film, dance, music, and architecture. Big examples of meta-narratives are religion and science, as well as Marxism or left perspectives. Meta-narratives suggest that absolute knowledge exists. Absolute knowledge and truth suggest that human knowledge can be objectively determined with the assistance of science, technology, society, and politics. Postmodern theory rejects the idea of absolute knowledge. This postmodern belief in subjective experience also leads to the rejection of the modern ideal of rationality. Rationality believes in rigorous scientific reasoning. If modern thought is defined by a belief in rationality, progress, and absolute knowledge, postmodernism can be defined by a belief in irrationality, subjective knowledge, and rejection of progress. Under this discussion of postmodernism, we find that a word metanarrative and grand metanarratives is found repeatedly. So we should know that what is this word metanarratives. The word metanarrative in critical theory and particular in postmodernism is a narrative about narratives of historical meaning, experience or knowledge, which offers a society legitimation through the anticipated completion of a master idea. So, we can finally say that postmodernism represents anti-modernist standpoint. It accompanies the celebration of a new information, high technology, which marks the affinity between such evocations and the political thesis of a properly post-industrial society. Thank you.